Welcome everyone to Izuna Talk episode 3. In today's episode we're gonna talk Nioh and a lot more with Nioh style player, content creator and streamer PooferLlama. Welcome onto the podcast, man.
Hey, thank you for having me here. I thought I was going to say something special, and then I realized I'm awkward as hell, so I don't know what I'm going to say. But yeah, thank you for having me here.
My pleasure.
Yep. So I guess, why did you want me here in the first place? I'm an awkward guy to talk to, aren't I?
Not really. I don't see you as awkward, really. The real reason is I'm a fan of yours. Saw a lot of your stuff on YouTube, saw a lot of your stuff, lurked a bit on the stream here and there. Love how you play Nioh, and just wanted to talk style play and Nioh in general with you.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So let's go with whatever questions you got. Let's go, professional interview. Yeah, professional interview time. Let's go.
So, I usually start with this. How did you start playing video games in general? Do you remember the first game you played, or whatever got you into the hobby in the first place?
Well, you see, when I was born, I started having a Nintendo Switch controller just straight out of the womb. I think my first games that I ever played must have just been through seeing my older brother play. So he played whatever was available on the Super Nintendo at the time. So I got exposed to games like Mario Kart. This is old. So Mario Kart, I remember seeing Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VI. And so it was just like a bonding thing with him and I. And then, of course, just as I grew up, the games got better in many different capacities. It was just a fun thing to do. And I think that might have been the case with many young boys at the time, too. Mm-hmm. And so my taste in games has changed over time. And at first, admittedly, it was kind of just like, hey, it's what all the kids are doing that I have fun with. And I want to be cool like them, too, kind of. I mean, we're all nerdy in some way. But sure. It's it was pretty cool to see some kids do really well with Super Smash Brothers on the Nintendo 64. I remember just spamming up B with Kirby forever, and then seeing other players actually play somewhat competently. And so it's hey, I want to get that good too, because I'll feel good. But a lot of that's changed since then. More recently, now that I'm in my 30s, my aim for just playing games is less about the sense of, hey, I just want to feel badass. It's well, I just kind of want to have fun. And we all have busy lives, and we just want to have some good entertainment that we can just enjoy. And so when it came to Nioh, my pathway to Nioh is actually pretty interesting. So I've been a fan of the Ninja Gaiden games for a long time.
That was one of the questions, so go ahead with Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah, so Ninja Gaiden was one of the games I was very much interested in, and that was just because I remember it on the original Xbox release, and so it just seemed like such a cool game to me at the time because it just was so radically different in terms of what I could expect. It was, games before then, I felt like I could get away with button mashing, or I did get away with button mashing, and not necessarily a lot of deliberate choices need to be made. And it was fun. So Ninja Gaiden was kind of a kick in the face where it's very challenging. And so it kind of became this objective to get better at the game. But I kind of dropped that, I think, as I went into college and whatnot. But it wasn't until after college, I remember I got my hands on Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge for the Wii U of all consoles. So that was rather surprising. And there was a sense of achievement in being able to complete that game on Ultimate Ninja. So it was pretty fun, but that didn't really set the stage for Nioh as much. If anything, it got me exposed to the idea of other Team Ninja IPs. But
so was that your first action game?
No, I don't remember my first action game.
You played all the other classic, like Devil May Cry?
I never played DMC, actually. So I guess then let's just say that Ninja Gaiden was the first one. Let's just go with that. I don't really remember. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I don't have this timeline of, X led to Y led to Z, or anything like that. It's all just I just played games, and whatever was fun was fun. But I guess when it came to Nioh, so this will be much more relevant, I actually got introduced to Nioh through this. So I started my streams, this was 3 years ago. Well, several years ago now. So my streams, I played the games that I had at my disposal, which included Ninja Gaiden 3 Rage's Edge on the Wii U. And so it was just a fun thing. I was streaming to like 3-4 people at most. The two
Mm-hmm.
of those people were, I think I would watch myself, I'd have my wife just lurk, and then there was like this other guy, this completionist. Yeah, he won't mind if I call him an achievement whore. I'm sure he'll be fine with it. But he was a streamer that I watched, and he was playing Ninja Gaiden at the time, and that's just what I was looking up on Twitch. And there was another person that I was watching, and this was sometime after I was playing Ninja Gaiden, and he was the one that actually introduced me to Bloodborne because he thought I might
Mm-hmm.
like it. And then from there, he actually introduced me to Nioh as well. And so it just so happens that my interest of Ninja Gaiden led me to somebody who not only liked that, but also liked Bloodborne. And then he said, "Hey, I think you'll like Nioh." And he was right, and I did. So that's where my Nioh exposure began. But
Mm-hmm.
even within that, he actually recommended I play a certain way that it kind of led me to create my Flowing Shadow build, which literally is as it sounds. It's pretty much the only move I spammed.
Mm-hmm.
But that it was a very limited way of approaching the game because I'm just doing one thing over and over again, even if that was effective. But the overall experience of Nioh was cool. So I was like, hey, there's Ninja Gaiden stuff. I like Ninja Gaiden stuff. And I got to replicate that with the Dragon Ninja set, with the Izanagi set, basically kind of what he told me. But here's really when things started to branch out and when I felt like, not necessarily I was coming into my own, but more that I was starting to learn how to explore the game in a way that was actually really enjoyable to me. So
Mm-hmm.
this was the first big thing. I remember just chancing across a video from Fear Dude, and I saw him play Nioh in a way I just didn't know existed. It just didn't occur to me. I mean, now in hindsight, it's like, well, if I had just explored the game, it would have been obvious. But coming from somebody who was used to button mashing and doing maybe one or two things to get through a game, seeing somebody play in a way that I would have considered inefficient or suboptimal, but looked a million times cooler,
Mm-hmm.
just all of a sudden made me just kind of clicked. It was like, dude, I should be doing that. That looks so awesome, so fun. I want to be able to enjoy the game at that level. And so from there on out, things start to change. And that's when I kind of started to, I guess, do things a little bit more meaning and more purpose in regards to not only my streams, but my gameplay.
Sure. So you approached style play thanks to community, pretty much.
Yes.
People,
so
people
I
that
do.
made videos and showcase what you could do with the systems.
Yes. So I do believe that XLH Gladiator on YouTube was kind of the one who, I guess, discovered a stylistic way of play, and other players kind of just built off of that and went from there. But my exposure was from Fear Dude, who I think probably got it for somebody else. And so I guess it is, as you say, very community based. And one of my goals, actually, to this day, is to kind of replicate the same thing, kind of pay it forward. So I had that exposure to the game, the stylistic style of play, and I just want others to know that it exists because it's a load of fun. And it's just bottom line, there's like thousands of hours of potential gameplay. And I try to iterate that. Anytime someone I see says, hey, I didn't know you could play the game this way. This looks so cool. This totally changes how I feel about the game. I'm like, yeah, man. You know, imagine getting like another 1,000+ hours of gameplay from a game you thought was trash. All right.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I can understand if you're not exposed to this stuff and you see things in a certain way and you just don't even know about this whole other dimension. It's just like, well, hey, Neo's going to be an inferior clone to Dark Souls because it's so complicated. Why does it need to be so complicated? And I can just do this and whatever. So there's a lot of things that go into play, which is why I try to educate people and show them just how they can experience the same sense of joy that I've got and get a lot more bang for their buck. I mean, there's games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, you play it maybe like 3 times, I guess, if you want to go through different difficulties, maybe see things from a certain angle, and like that's it. And that's going to take maybe 100, 150 hours tops. Whereas with Nioh and Nioh 2, I've played both of them a combined of 2,500 hours.
Streamed. Oh, wow.
Streamed, okay? That's how much I've streamed. I would
Jesus,
not,
that's
like,
a lot.
That's a lot of fucking time. All right? And I can concretely say, I would say like 95+% of those hours are completely worth it. And to think about how little I spent in regards to the amount of gameplay I've got is nuts. All right.
Mm-hmm.
MMOs, other free to play games will probably cost more than what I've spent. I spent 50 on the first Nioh, 50 on Nioh 2 for PC, and 80 for Nioh on the PS4. And I'm like, dude, I easily would have spent like double, triple that without any hesitation because the
Yeah, of course.
experience has been that awesome.
Mm-hmm. So did you always play for style? Did you or do you also try to some challenge runs, some like non elixir run, or level 1 runs and something like that?
So Nioh 2, my perspective has changed. I'll talk about how I did things in Nioh 1. So in the
Yeah, of
first
course.
Nioh, I was still kind of just adapting to all sorts of different things. And the first time I played Nioh, it was just, hey, I'm trying to understand what I'm working with. And I didn't really know what I was working with. And here's how my playthroughs went. I completed the game all the way through the Abyss, 100%, whatever, with my Dragon Ninja Flowing Shadow build.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what I did. And then when I saw how Fear Dude played it, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should try playing the other weapons. I haven't even touched them, like, at all. So I did a bunch of playthroughs with each weapon to kind of understand what I was really working with and seeing, hey, could I like make a build or whatever that would work with it? And then once I finished that, I'm like, okay, let me do a level 1 run. I did a level 1, no armor, no magic, no ninjutsu, no living weapon, whatever. I did
Okay.
that, and I got through the game all the way through Way of the Nioh, and then when I got to the Abyss, I kind of did a level 1 Abyss run, where I basically just didn't, if I died, then I tried to do like a no-death type of thing. I don't know how to explain it, but basically it was like I did a level 1 run in the
A
Abyss.
survival run, pretty much.
Kind of, yeah. But I mean, you died in 1 hit anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
I try to make every boss floor like a no-hit thing, because or a
Sure.
no-death thing, so that's pretty much it. But yeah, I did level 1 entirety of the Abyss, and so after that, I was like, well, I'm kind of done with the game, so what do I do next? And then I decided to re-explore some of the stylish play, because I was like, you know what, level 1 was okay and all, but I feel like there's something more enjoyable I could do. So I remember players like Hagira Simaru, who was in YouTube. I remember reaching out to him sometime like years back, and he had helped advise me make a setup so that I could really tap into that style play. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started using significantly weaker weapons, or just lowering my damage enough and increasing my defense enough so that I could experiment with combat flow. And that's really when a lot of the stylish play began. So that was really the biggest thing when it came to Nioh 1. Now with the Nioh 2, I definitely didn't think of doing challenge runs, and I'll get to that into a bit. But I'll talk about my brief, I guess, journey. I don't know why I don't like that word for whatever reason. But I'll talk about my Nioh 2 experience. So
Sure,
I
right.
remember playing I got access to the alpha or the beta. I don't remember. I think I got access to both, and I was like desperate to try them out because I was such a Nioh whore, admittedly. But when it came to Nioh 2, I remember trying to take my knowledge of Nioh 1 and put that into Nioh 2. And it was actually quite difficult to do so because Nioh 2 is quite different in many respects in terms of combat flow and style play. So I was pretty much, I don't think I really ever used soul cores at all in the alpha or the beta.
Mm-hmm.
And not even really in the last chance trial. So yeah, in any of the demos, I didn't use any soul cores whatsoever, because they were so foreign to me, and I was just so stuck in my ways in regards to combat flow from Nioh 1. And so I was very frustrated with, hey, I
Okay.
can't seem to manage my ki. I can't seem to manage my resources. What do I do? And I got really frustrated. But it wasn't until, I would say, Combo Mat 5 or 6, whichever one I released, in which the player G-Soul, who I did feature, showcased some really cool gameplay involving all the new Nioh 2 mechanics. And then I know
Mm-hmm.
players like Witty Clever Name, he's a Twitch streamer. He actually showcased using all sorts of jutsu, all sorts of soul cores, and they kind of rubbed me the wrong way at first. But, and I'd also seen things like item cancels, and for me, it was just like
Mm-hmm.
blasphemous gameplay. I'm like, no, it's not Nioh 1 pure gameplay.
Mm-hmm. So
But
you felt like they were cheap
I
in a
felt like
way.
they were cheap. All right.
Mm-hmm.
There were many other things I was neglecting. One is that, dude, we only had 2 difficulties. Way of the Nioh gameplay compared to Dream of the Storm gameplay is just a world of difference.
Yeah.
So I wasn't comparing apples to apples. And not to mention, I wasn't giving the new things a real chance. And that was probably my biggest problem. And I think that actually is the biggest problem in general for many players, is just that they don't retain an open mind and they limit themselves from new possibilities. And that's kind of one of the biggest things I imagine for any and all style play, which is, hey, if you want to really embrace style play, you got to explore all sorts of things you might think are bad or terrible, because you can probably find some really cool use out of them, which is been my experience. The more I try to do all sorts of niche things, the more little things I discover, and that we discover as a community. All sorts of tech has been found as in relation to that. And what's been awesome is that the gameplay balance in terms of the hardest difficulties have accounted for a lot of this. So it's just, it really pushes you to your limits, and your ability to be creative just goes up the charts. Now, when it comes to challenge runs, I did try a level 1 like nothing run all the way through the first 2 difficulties, but I kind of realized I wasn't having that much fun with it. It wasn't so much a matter of me not being able to do it, as opposed to like I just didn't really want to do it. And I'm like, okay, am I really going to do this again? Is this the way that I enjoy playing the game the most? Like, I die to one hit no matter what, and I can't really style as much as I'd like. And I'm like, I don't really feel like doing this. If someone else wants to do it and get the fame, go for it. I just want to play in a way that's fun for me. So those have kind of been the 2 biggest things that I take with myself now when I play any game. What's most fun for me? And just, I don't even remember. What was the second thing? I got the memory of a goldfish, but I try to play in a way, bottom line, that's most fun for me. And now I remember, I try to retain an open mind. So I try to approach everything, be as fair as possible to it, because by doing so, I'm just going to enjoy myself much more. So that's where I'm at now with Nioh 2. It's just, I want to have fun, and I want to learn as many new things as possible. And honestly, Nioh 2 is just a game that, like, the more I get into it, the more I'm like, dude, there's a lot I don't know. It's crazy. You've got 11 different weapons, which means 55 different weapon combinations. And then you've got 6 soul core slots with 2 different guardian spirits with a shit ton of...
It's a huge game.
It's huge. And I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm going to be able to go through every conceivable crevice in this game in like a year or 2. Like, there's just endless gameplay. You've got a bunch of different difficulties. They've added scrolls, so you've got like your own little side mission stuff. It's quite honestly almost endless gameplay. And it's $50 if you go buy it. Like, come on. All right.
That's a lot of value.
Right. It's really difficult to make it stale. And see, I didn't even consider how many different builds you could have now. You have builds that allow you to effectively have infinite yokai shift, infinite magic, more or less. It's intentional, and the game is fair about it. And I'm just like, dude, I want to try all this stuff, but I just don't have the time anymore. But that's a good thing. That's a really good thing for a player interested in style. Just being like, hey, there's so many different options that you could try.
And talking about all these over builds that you can do you think the loot system and the equipment system in Nioh, does it help style play or does it hinder it a bit? Like, do you ever feel like maybe you wanted to do a general build without going all OP, just like I don't know, a key consumption build? Did you ever feel like the loot system and the RPG stuff went in the way of that? Like, so too much farming or too much grinding?
Well, that's a good question. I think you're going to get a lot of different answers depending on who you talk to. I think overall, though, when it comes to the loot system, while there are certain grievances I do have with it, overall it's been a blast. And I don't give a shit about builds. Like, I go out of my way with my character to show, hey, look, I'm going to like not use almost any of the build mechanics. And if I do, they're going to be fairly marginal compared to what you're going to see on YouTube. And I can play stylishly without investing that much. I don't use any of the powerful graces, which are, for anyone who doesn't know, graces are kind of the most powerful sets available in the end game for Nioh, and you'll pretty much see most builds involving some crazy, ridiculous combination of like 2 of them, where they get 2 super powerful effects. I use one of the sets, but I don't even use its main function, which is like, hey, if you do this, you effectively get a 70% damage boost. I'm
You
like,
use
yeah,
the
I don't really care
you
about
use
that.
Amenu Azuma, right?
I use
Amenu
Amino
without
Uzume.
Death
Correct.
Dancer.
Without Death Dancer. I specifically use it for its utility. I'm pretty much just
Mm-hmm.
looking for utility. And so I get the most important bonuses for me from that set were the bonuses you get on performing a dodge attack. As you move
Mm-hmm.
faster and you recover more ki. That's amazing utility for me. And I use dodge attacks almost all the time, so I have them up at all times. I don't have to pop any jutsu or anything like that. I just have them at all times. And then the other parts of my set involve, and this is something I actually carried all the way from the lower difficulties and then just upgraded it very minorly. So I use Hat Helmet, which provides me a ki recovery buff if I wind an enemy. So if I reduce their ki to 0, I get a ki recovery buff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I use Pit Viper's robes. I use Pit Viper's set and Red Demon set, not for any damage purposes, but because the bonuses from Pit Viper that I get involve getting extra ki and consuming less ki. And same thing with Red Demon armor. I basically reduce the amount of ki that I consume from my gear by at least 15%.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get a little bit of a ki boost.
So-
That's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much my build too.
That's pretty much it. I think my range weapons, they had Magatsui's Grace on both of them, which I'm looking to swap out because, let's see, they had Anima. They gave me like one Anima. That's all I get from it. And that's all. I don't really need it. I was in the process of trying to swap them over to Izanami's Grace so that I can have significantly greater other realm resistance. Basically, again, what's the purpose of it? Just ki management. That's it. But really, if I really, really cared about it, you know what I could have done that I haven't done? I could use one of the ultimate stats, but I haven't. My character on the
So
PS4.
you don't even use Ultimate Courage?
Nope. You know what my stats are? As of right now, I think on the PS4, they're 88 in all stats because I am not known to give a single fuck.
So you don't really care at all about the build stuff, even for flavor stuff or something like that?
Yes, I am specifically stress testing the game to see, hey, can I play the game in an enjoyable way by not indulging in any of the crazy mechanics? The answer is yes. Now, right now, I've noticed in the Underworld my damage is falling off, but that's because I literally did not upgrade my gear since I started it. I think
okay.
I haven't. I've gone through roughly 20% of the Underworld without upgrading my gear. Now I'm like, okay, I think I need to start upgrading my gear. Maybe I should start soul matching with the stuff that's like +5 levels or 6 levels above me by now, because that's what I'm starting to get. I'm like, okay, I think it's time, but I just haven't. So again, it's always just it's proof of concept. Can I stress test this game and have a fun time? And only now am I starting to feel it. But on my PC playthrough, it's the opposite. I'm like, I'm not even doing any build work, and I'm just plowing through it with very minor things here and there. And it's kind of a good way for me to say, I think they balance the game overall pretty well. The game is not as build dependent, I think, as players might think they are. I think one of the issues that the player base has, and I can understand the frustration, they can sometimes chase. It's okay. I'm trying to find a good way to put this. It's like you've got 95% of what you want, but you're going to complain about the 5% you don't have. That's like, dude, how big of an impact does that 5% really have? That especially to the point you're going to neglect the really, really, really good stuff. And for whatever reason, I feel like Nioh gets an unfair rap. It's like, okay, hey, I wanted to have, my accessory has 2 start stats that are perfect rolls, but I want to have 4 start perfect rolls on there. And I'm like, you're going to lose your shit over that? Like, it's not necessary. But I can understand when players say, hey, I've spent so much time trying to get this accessory to be this grace. Why is it taking so damn long? So I get that, because
I think that's actually an interesting point, because I don't play full style. I do play a bit more efficiently, maybe, but I pretty much want to have an action game. So I don't really care about one-shotting stuff with builds and all that. Okay. But even then, like, I do see a problem with the loot system, basically because even if I only want, like, the correct piece of equipment with the correct grace and nothing else, so I don't really care about star effect, I don't really care about min-max stats on the specific drop or anything like that. I still need to have. Still need to put a lot of time into farming to even get that. Even with all the new with the new stats like lucky drop, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree. There
Mhm.
are certain things that could be done to make the experience better. I
Mhm.
completely agree.
Yeah, pretty
I
much.
will be.
The big problem is the accessory. The accessory. I really don't know why they didn't add a decent way to roll graces. At least.
I can see your point. I know
Mm-hmm.
for me anyway, it's really annoying to farm for the hidden arts of combat. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's not fun after a certain point. And so I certainly think drop rates and whatnot or some measure of control, something to I guess make the process more enjoyable would be a good thing because I don't think there's anyone who's going to in their right mind can say, "Hey, you know that boss, I really would enjoy fighting him 100 times to get one
Mm-hmm.
skill." Like that's just I mean, I didn't like that. I still don't like that.
Yeah.
And I think many players in the community have resorted to using just whatever tools that they can to avoid that process. And I can't really blame them. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
painful to just fight the same guy 100 times. And I actually mean 100 times. The first time I was going for hidden skills from Maya the Toshie, so he has bracing breeze and triple threat. It actually took me 100 kills to get it both from him.
Wow. My
Like
God.
that's not cool. Even after they changed drop rates and stuff, it took me 75 times
Mm-hmm.
to get Ren Hayabusa's skills, all of them. So he has 3 different infos and he has 2 different hidden skills. I actually got all the smithing techs before I got the hidden skills. And I was like, am I ever gonna get this crap? You know, like that's not fun. And so I imagine the same sort of thing applies to whether it be soul cores or even your accessories or just really any piece of gear. So I definitely think the stress of that should be reduced. I think I've talked about it with various other peoples in the community, and it's just things like, hey, if you kill a boss and they have a skill, and let's say you get a crusher title so you don't take a hit, maybe you should be guaranteed a skill drop, like no matter
Yeah,
what.
that would be actually a great idea. Like
I Right, and I
rewarding
think
skill play with the drops.
that's just an example. It doesn't have to be a crusher title.
Yeah, of course. Whatever things.
But just something like, hey, you complete a challenge, you're guaranteed a drop. Like that'd be nice. Like, okay, cool. Or something similar to how everyone's experience was when they fought Ren Hayabusa and beat him for the first time. You got 2 skills. You got a Zuna drop and you got Flame Dragon Scroll no matter what. It
Mm-hmm.
was always like, sweet, I got this, man. And that was a really tough boss fight, so it felt really earned. And having things like that, I think, are a great thing. It's just unfortunate that wasn't really replicated for many other situations. Heck, even the new player experience, I'm very critical about it because it's so obtuse. The game's already overwhelming and obtuse as it is, but the beginning of the game just makes that even harder to tap into.
Yeah,
Nioh is
so
a game.
that was actually one of the questions. Like, do you think because the problem with Neo from casual community standpoint, I feel it's that it's more in the middle. Like a lot of people either treat it as a Soulsborne title, and so they just stick with one stance, hit the boss a couple of times, and then dodge away, or they treat it like Diablo pretty much. So full on RPG, just do the build, make a strong build, one shot everything, and go from there. So, do you think other than the community aspect, do you think that the game should be more clear about some stuff and about how to approach mechanics in the specific?
Yes, I certainly feel that the beginner experience in the tutorials
Mm-hmm.
could be a lot better. And I believe the director himself is aware of this, but they don't have really any plans to address that. Now, why that's the case, I don't know, but I imagine it's going to be far more complex than some throwaway comment like they don't give a shit. Because
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that the developers really do, and they do pay attention to the communities as well as they can, but maybe there's something going on behind the scenes. Maybe it's something like, hey, they're higher ups just don't want to invest the money to do so. I mean, I'm
Yeah, I think.
sure you've dealt with managers or bosses who are you're just like, hey, here's the problem, and I would like to fix it. And they're like, okay, what do you need? Or they won't even ask that. You'll just say, hey, here's the problem, and here's what I need to fix it. And they're like, well, I'm not going to pay money to get you the tools.
Mm-hmm.
So just fix it as is. And you're like, I can't fix the problem then. Like, what are you supposed to do? I've
Yeah, I
dealt
think
with
that
that.
the problem is as a marketing thing. Like,
It
even
could
if,
be.
like, talking frankly, like 90% of people are casual, which is not a bad thing or anything. But they just play the game to maybe finish it a couple of times and then that's it. So like investing money on explaining hidden mechanics or explaining how to actually play the game properly wouldn't really have a return, which is a shame, and it's something that applies to pretty much the modern gaming industry. But that's it. Like, I don't think they really intend to spend money on this thing, and just to have like 1% of the player actually engage with the mechanics.
Right, and I think that's probably the angle anyone who's just thinking about Nioh from a money perspective is going to think. It's like, well, we could dump all this money to get barely any return. We could spend the same money doing something else entirely. So it could literally just be that. But again, I'm just purely speculating. I don't really
Yeah, of
know
course, me
anything.
too. I don't work with the Ninja, so
Right. And, even though I've done a podcast with one of their community managers, I don't know jack shit. So that's really about it. It's like it's a difficult thing to assess. But irrespective of that, I certainly think the new player experience could be a lot better. And I
So
actually do.
what would you change?
So I think one of the biggest hurdles when it comes to Nioh, and this is what I would change, is that I think its marketing could be improved. And more than just that, more than just marketing, and they don't like market their game at all when they really should, because
Oh
it's a
yeah.
really great game. But I think, let's see, for the new player experience, trying not to just repeat myself, I guess I'll just focus on something more concrete. So when you approach Nioh for the very first time, you have no idea what to expect. You're going to go off of, because you have no information, because you don't know what to expect, you don't know what the game's like, you're going to go with what other people think it's like.
Yeah, so either Soulsborne or Diablo, pretty much.
Nioh 2 is called a Souls-like. That's just what it's called. And I don't agree with it. I think Nioh is completely different. The experience in Nioh is unique. But the problem is players don't know that. Because they don't know what to expect, they're going to go for that. And so I think what could have been changed is simply just educating people to what Nioh is more about. And this is where the beginner experience is so crucial. And I think the game kind of misses that mark. This is where I think tutorials could show rather than just tell how different it is. Because I don't think players really want to deal with a ton of reading. I don't like reading. It's just, I'm not here to read someone's dissertation. I just want to play a game. And so when people have to work for their game and they have to work so much, it's just exhausting, especially if you're just playing games to have fun. So you're going to go with what's easy. So what I think could have been done to make things more apparent that Nioh is different is to have tutorials that are designed to reward certain types of play. So in the tutorials, it's just like, here's a key pulse, or here's how you do a burst counter. But it's like, okay, I know how to do these, but I don't really understand why I need to do them or what they allow me to do. Even mechanics like Flux and Flux 2, rarely used by many people. A lot of the really, really cool mechanics with Nioh 2 are largely unexplored simply because people don't even know why they should go with that when they can just, hey, let me spam Moonlit Snow over and over again in high stance. Like, if you can just do that and get through the game and kill everything, what's the point of being able to explore a stylistic play? And I can't fault them for that. That is one of the failings with Nioh. I also think that when Nioh 2 starts up, you create your character, which I think is great. I think it's a great addition. But when you pick your starting weapons, you see a bunch of weapons, and you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to pick 2 of these, and this is all I can use for the game. Like, it's not exactly clear. And then it's like, all right, they got starting stats. And so you see a number attached to it, and you're like, okay, I guess I got to worry about these numbers. And then you look at your stat sheet, and then there's just a shit ton of numbers. And it's just like core stats. You're like, okay, core means super important. And you see all these numbers, and you're like, God damn it, I don't know how to deal with all this. Let me just find a build, someone who knows what they're doing, right? I think what would have been helpful is if there was more of a hand to really guide players to see what Nioh is about. So here's a simple fix. This doesn't require like anything, all right? When you pick a starting weapon, as opposed to the focus being, hey, you get +1 magic, which is ultimately meaningless. It could be, hey, you pick this weapon, and because you picked it, you get some skills to start off with right off the bat. This was the case in the Last Chance trial beta or demo or whatever you want to call it. You pick a weapon, you get to mess around with it. Like, you get some skills. Like, I was so excited about that. I'm like, sweet, this makes weapons more meaningful. And when I actually played Nioh 2 on the PC, I went with hatchets because it has 3 starting skills. You get three different throws to work with right away. I'm like, that's such an edge for me, because I don't want to just be doing normal attacks. I want to be able to do cool shit like Beyond Infinity right away. So Beyond Infinity, of course, is a 5th skill, but hatchets, it has 3 skills from the get-go. So whatever your starting weapons are, you just get some points to work with early on. Maybe your proficiency is like level 5 or something, or they give you all the inner skills for the weapon that you choose, because then you're like, okay, so the reason I want to pick this weapon is because I get an edge with that weapon. Let me try these skills out. And the stat, okay, whatever, but all of a sudden your focus goes from numbers and builds to, hey, I've got skills to work with and experiment with. And that's, again, a very simple fix, and I am a bit disappointed they haven't done that. I also think the dojo missions need to be more fleshed out. So, for example, it could be something like, here's let's give you a situation where your ki is not going to recover at all for the purpose of this exercise, and this exercise is going to be to show you the power of Flux and Flux 2. All right, so when you unlock them or something or whatever, I don't know the exact specifics, but it's like, all right, you got to kill this target, but all you can do is, after you don't recover any ki, you got to make sure you Flux and Flux 2 in order to keep your ki level high. And the only time you fail is if you're not able to take out the target while, I guess, using your ki or something like that.
Still having ki, yeah.
Just like a more pointed tutorial or something like, all right, the only way you recover your ki, or you have to kill this target by like using your yokai skills. Your yokai skills don't do damage, but you're going to use them to help regenerate ki, or just something more pointed, just to be like, oh, hey, now I've learned this actual in-game skill. This skill, I can apply this to all sorts of different situations. I think that alone would help players kind of branch out into trying all sorts of things, as opposed to min-maxing damage and then seeing that it's not working as well as they may want it to. It just changes how you approach the game. So just having those things like that and small little things like that would make dojo missions more meaningful, as opposed to like, all right, here's the dojo mission for magic. Oh, by the way, you've probably already had to learn this on your own, but we're going to teach you how to ready jutsu for magic, even though in order to do it, you have to like complete 2-3 missions of the game. Like, it's just, it's so oddly placed. I'm like, let's get the dojo missions earlier. Have all the novice missions open from the beginning. All right. Have them all open from the beginning, because nothing is more frustrating for a style player than just not having access to options until very, very late. Like, that sucks. It, like, first playthrough is so painful, not because it's particularly difficult, but just because you don't have tools. So if you want to explore, you just can't, because you got to wait. You're gated until, like, let's see, region 3 or 4 until you get access to like most of the major game mechanics, and then you don't even get the mystic arts until like region 5 and 6. So it's just annoying. It's a nuisance, and no one really enjoys that, just as much as they don't enjoy farming for gear or farming for freaking skills. Like, those things alone, I think, really should be changed, but I don't think they're going to be.
Yeah, but I can totally agree. Like, in general, the user experience in Nioh is pretty abysmal. Like, the game never teaches you anything, never explains to you anything. But I think another problem is the general game design. Like, at the end of the day, they should either give a motivation to do stuff like that, or like force the player to adapt to situation. Because the problem, I think, with the game design, that it never, even if the game would teach you how to do like key pulls, weapon switching key pulls, and use all the how to use all the skill of a weapon and all that. I think the problem is that until like way of the third NG, so way of the demon, is it?
Yeah.
You never really need to do it. Like, as long as you have numbers on you, you can pretty much kill everything without any effort.
Well,
Without
I
ever
actually don't.
needing to engage with the actual combat.
I don't actually really mind that. I used to, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't care about that anymore because the impact of the gameplay on my gameplay is negligible. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't care how someone plays it. They want to do one-shot builds, go ahead. They don't want to learn the mechanics, go ahead. I think that's, you buy a game, and if that's what the game allows, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not here to like gatekeep or anything. I want people
Yeah,
to
yeah, of
enjoy
course.
their game. And so build play is certainly fun, and it's actually an enjoyable aspect for many players. So yeah, go for it. But I certainly think showing players that there's more than just that is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think for most players starting the game, it would be beneficial to have some understanding of both technical side of play and build play. Right now, I feel it
Mm-hmm.
just leans way too much into build play for the majority of people. And I think, I see many comments that are like, hey, how do you get past here? What's your build? I'm like, look, my build is shit. All right. It's even in all stats. I use all the weapons. I don't really do anything too extravagant. But because I have such a vast technical knowledge of the game, I'm able to not worry about it whatsoever. So what I try to tell people is if you're a new player, go for some combination of build stuff and technical play. Whenever you find the technicalities of the game's a little too complex, a little too much for you, then work on the build stuff. And then when you're
Mm-hmm.
ready or comfortable, you can change that divide over time. And again, it's really, if it's enjoyable for you, then do it. If it's not, then don't bother. Like, I'm not going to say, hey, you have to play in a style way. It's just I
Yeah, of
play in a
course,
style
of
way
course.
because it's fun for me. So yes, you can play in a build way and you can trivialize all content. And if that's fun for you, go for it. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't mind. Only issue I have is when people become all elitist about it and are just like, hey, your build is trash and you're trash. And I'm like, okay, dude, I don't want to give a shit about this anymore. I've dealt with this hundreds of times.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the toxic part of any community, pretty much.
right, right. So even the director is okay with players having that reliance on build stuff. It is kind
Mm-hmm.
of like the de facto
Yeah, that was my
difficulty
point. Like
slider.
it's just so baked in the design that it's sometimes it's hard to, without any motivation, like do something else, because like doing a strong build, even without even going for a one shot build, but like just a general strong build, it's more than enough to finish the game. Just staying in high stance all the time, and that's, I
Yeah,
think
it is.
it's a bit of a shame that the game never like pushes you to do anything like that, like anything more than that, pretty much.
Well, I don't really mind as much as I used to because
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, Neo is as difficult or as easy as you want it to be. And being
Yeah.
able to have that flexibility is huge. So
So
now they've
you
had
like
that.
the breadth of choice you have with Neo and with the
Sorry?
build system. You like the breadth of choice, so
Yes, yes, I do. And I
that you
think
can play pretty much any way you like.
yeah, it's your game. You customize the game
Mm-hmm.
however the hell you want. So I specifically avoid most of all the build stuff, and I have a lot of fun. Other
Mm-hmm.
players don't. Some people like using the stone mechanic, so they have their own like scaling slider, so to speak, and they can scale the game as crazy as they want, and then they can be like, hey, you know what? I want to have the craziest build, but I want to actually like feel like I'm making good use of it as opposed to just trivializing everything.
Mm-hmm.
So many players play at +9 stone difficulty, whereas I don't. I only have used the stone if I think, hey, I feel like things are getting a little too paper weak. So I was debating doing that for my PC playthrough because everything's just dying in like a minute. Like I'll kill a boss in a minute, and I'm like, I put no effort into that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, maybe I want to do the difficulty slider right now. But I'm like, you know what? It might be just better for me to get onto demon difficulty where I don't feel the need to use that slider. But again, it's an option, and I have it. And I think having more options in a game of this scope is awesome. I think Neo's biggest strength is just not only allowing you to customize the difficulty, but literally just letting you play however you want. And
Mm-hmm.
that is a really difficult task to balance. And I do have to applaud the game team and whoever's responsible for really making the game, all things considered, just that viable from every perspective. One of the most common questions I get asked is like, hey, what's the best build for this scenario? And I'm like, look, I'm not using a build right now, but even in the end game, whatever you think will work will work. Like, it doesn't matter. You can make the jankiest, shittiest build and you'll still clear the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and not in a slow way. All right, you go with even one of the graces, you're already super powerful. All right, if I just went with Death Dancer alone, I don't think I would need to upgrade my gear in the underworld for like another 20 floors. All right,
Yeah,
because I
probably.
basically nearly double my damage. Like, that's huge. So I cut everything in half. All right. But players are able to get super powerful effects from 2 graces. So one of the most powerful combinations is where you get Death Dancer from Ame no Uzume's grace, and then you use versatility. So you get like a 70% damage from Death Dancer, and I forget what it is for versatility. I don't know if it's like 30 to 60%. Like, that's a lot of damage. And then that's not even considering the fact that you could use familiar talismans to inflict confusion in like 2 seconds. So everything just dies like so quickly. It's comically ridiculous. It's comically easy when you do all of that. And so players then, to compensate, use the stone stuff to get to +9, but it really doesn't matter when a target's confused and they're taking like 300% additional damage. All right. It's just wild. And then that's not considering that they've probably built with some of the ultimate stats, which are an option on Wise and Beyond. And then it's just crazy how much power you can stack on your character. And that's intentional. So yeah, if you use any part of your brain to make a build, you'll be able to get through the game reasonably well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's fine that you can plow through the game. I don't mind anymore. I used to, but I don't. That, like, I'm not a purist. I'm like, hey, what's the most fun for me? This is the most fun. I'll do that. That's it. That's all I think about.
Yeah, that's a commendable way to see things. So another thing I was curious about, with style play specifically,
Sure.
how do you think people should approach learning how to style? Because style play, it's a really nebulous term, doesn't really mean much. Like, so how should people approach learning to do some of the stuff like you showcase in the combo mats, for example?
Well, style play might look easy for some. It looks easier than it actually is. A lot of players spend a lot of time, and I've certainly spent a lot of time. I've already said I've played Nioh and Nioh 2 for 2,500 hours. That's a lot of time for anything, let alone freaking video games. So when it comes to style play, there is a lot of knowledge you kind of need to have. So my advice would be, and I think I made 2 videos about this in relation to how to start styling. You need to make sure first and foremost to start slow. You are going to get frustrated because Nioh is not an easy game. All right, enemies will destroy you if you don't know what you're doing. But when it comes to any generic target, all right, you need to know how your enemy works. You need to know how your weapon works. Now, with the addition of soul cores, you need to know how that works in conjunction with certain soul cores. Then if you add another weapon into the mix, there's that. Then there's items. And so it's just many different variables to consider. So the interaction of all of them is going to be difficult to free flow. So if you really want to know how to get to the point of being able to style as players do in the combo mat, you need to have a deep technical knowledge, and that is very time consuming. Fortunately, there are many YouTubers and whatnot who've done a good job of it. One of the best channels, in my opinion, for any guide is Last to Load.
Yeah, absolutely. The guy is amazing.
Right, and he has stellar guides that are very thorough. And I'm actually in the process of trying to develop a course to try to explain exactly how to style. But again, the thing with style is that everyone's going to have certain preferences. People are going to do certain things because that's just the nature of player expression. Like, I like certain weapons that others don't give a shit about. I like the split staff a lot. All right, I love the split staff. Split staff is one of my favorite weapons in the game.
There are people that don't like the split staff.
Yes, there's people that don't like the split staff because Changing Waves got nerfed, so therefore the weapon is bad.
Jesus Christ, that weapon is amazing.
Yeah, I love the split staff. I love styling with it. I love the fact that it can like jump over stuff. It's got crazy range. It's just a very flexible weapon. No pun intended with its fluid form, but it is just a really fun weapon for me to use and to think about. Hey, I can find interesting ways to take advantage of its long animation time to do things I couldn't with other weapons, like weapon abilities that you might think, hey, this has such a long animation time. I'm like, well, hey, is there a cool way for me to use this? It's like, oh, there's the ability Shapeshift Strike, where you're kind of like just spinning your split staff in place, and then it has 2 follow-up hits after that. I'm like, well, hey, you know what? I can actually trap a target in a corner, and while the animation's going off, they're just getting continuously staggered. Or, oh, hey, I can jump over targets after I do a longer animation attack. Like, it's just figuring out these different things is interesting when I couple them with different enemies. But of course, in order to get to that point, I have to know how the split staff toolkit works, and I need to know how that enemy is going to respond to it. And so it's just that interaction can be very difficult for players to get to. So make sure you start slow, work on one thing at a time. I generally pick an enemy that I'm comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be like a standard Yoki or an Enki. Those are pretty standard enemies to work with. And then I'll just try to see, hey, I want to really test this weapon. You do have the dojo option, the training ground, but that it's not gonna simulate, I guess, a real. I guess I don't know why this sounds so dumb to me, but it's not gonna really simulate a true combat situation, because there's gonna be a
Yeah.
difference between let's say you're practicing Fists Beyond Infinity. There's a difference between you trying to do Beyond Infinity when there's no threat whatsoever versus when you're practicing on an enemy in the dojo versus when you're just randomly dealing with an enemy out in the game.
Yeah, of
There's
course.
basically 3 levels. Now, it's still helpful to practice, in that capacity, but they are different because it's almost just like, when the situation's fresh in your face and maybe there's some adrenaline involved, it's going to be difficult to develop that habit. So you just got to take a lot of practice, and it's going to be frustrating. Like, I've only recently started to get the timing down fully for Beyond Infinity, so I can do it without really thinking about it. But it just takes a lot of time because there's just a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
But
take
yeah,
it slow and like use what the community gives you pretty much, like all
yeah,
the showcases you and Kagerazimaru do, or like the tutorials from Last to Load and everything like that.
right. I mean, we're all trying to figure out the best way to teach players
Yeah, of
and
course.
welcome them more into the fold. I mean, the community does its best to try to
Mm-hmm.
be inclusive because most of the people that I know with Nioh are somewhere between the age of 25 to 35, and so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them also come from Ninja Gaiden, and Ninja Gaiden community was pretty awful for me to deal with. So there was just too much crap, and I just didn't want to deal with that again. So I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure, alongside a lot of the other people in the community for Nioh, that we are as inclusive as possible, because that's all we want games to be, just to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the objective, is just have fun. Nothing else. I'm not trying to put any personal ego shit in there because I've dealt with it and I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Sure, that's more than fair. And instead, talking about Nioh in general, what do you, now
Sure.
that we have all the DLC and the game is pretty much done, like what do you think about the general design of the game? Like, for example, like one of the problems I have with the Nioh is the enemy design. Like in general, I think it's part of it is because of the Soul's DNA, or this the Soul's inspiration. But the fact is that you always pretty much are one on one, and a lot of the encounters are the same. Like I think the encounter design is really lacking. Like you always fight like a Yoki with someone with an archer or someone that shoots you from range, or and then you fight a group of soldier with a guy that shoots you from range. So the encounter design is pretty lacking. So what do you think in general about Neo general design?
Well, I think when it comes to encounter design, I think it's easy to criticize it, but trying to find an alternative solution is a lot more difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of been the thing. When I try to put myself in the designer's shoes, I'm like, okay, what could I actually do that'd be better? Because it's really easy to criticize the game, really is. And
Mm-hmm.
in fact, I see that a lot. And I try to think, what could I do that'd be better? And yeah, it's annoying when you have an archer sniping you. Don't get me wrong. And there are a lot of things that are very clearly inspired from the Soul series, whether it be
Yeah,
like
yeah, but
Agaki.
don't get me wrong. I wasn't talking about being annoying, being annoyed at that, but just the repetition of that. Like I don't see the game using different enemy combination to create new challenges.
I
Like it's
mean,
always the or pretty much same thing.
I think when it comes to any
Mm-hmm.
combinations, yeah, there could be different ones, but I think given the scope of what enemies can do, I think it'd be too chaotic. All
Mm-hmm.
right. For example, can you imagine in DLC 3 dealing with 2 of the generals at the same time? Imagine fighting a Fuki and a Suiki at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Those enemies are crazy hard on their own. Put them together, I don't know if many players would be able to get through it. those, I think the one time you deal with both of those together is maybe in a side mission, and I'm like, this would just be too chaotic. It would just be too much because each of those enemies is basically like a boss. I mean, imagine having Itsumare at the same time as like a Kinki. Itsumare is already its own like
Yeah, okay,
boss.
that would be so
Like
too
that would be
overwhelming.
nuts. All right. I think there is a matter of fairness that I think is really important. And
Mm-hmm.
what Nioh 1 had was just this, which was annoying, was that they just lumped a lot of things together. And so a lot of enemies would overlap and they would just slaughter you because you just can't manage 5 different things shooting at you at the same time while you have to deal with like a Magatsu warrior in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. All right. Trying to do style play on 2v1 scenarios is tough enough, but if there were certain enemy combinations, it would be too much because you've got burst attacks to account for. It's ridiculous. Itsumare's burst attacks are not easy to deal with, let alone like a Fuki's on top of that. Like that would be brutal. It wouldn't even be a matter of it being difficult, which it would be. It would just be an unfun form of difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
The objective of Nioh, as from stated by the director, was he wanted the player and combat situations to be as just as even as fair as possible, so that
Mm-hmm.
it never felt like there was too much of an edge in either direction. Now, of course, with build play, it's a little different, but again, on a pure technical base, he wanted it to be as fair as possible. So, and I generally think they've hit that. Like, yeah, it's not that interesting dealing with a Yoki and 2 soldiers or skeleton warriors shooting you, but it's like, yeah, imagine if it was a Fuki and a Yoki shooting a cannon at you. Like, it'd be too much.
Yeah, it
And
would be
so
more interesting, especially in the higher difficulty. It would be a different way to approach a challenge.
it would, but I think it would border on being just frustrating and not
Mm-hmm.
fun. So I think they erred on the side of caution, and I'm okay with that. Instead, the way in which they've been managing difficulty, I think, is overall been much more improved from Nioh 1. So Nioh 1, you got one shot like almost all the time, which isn't fun no matter what. Like, unless it's very specific attacks. But in Nioh 2, they had a different avenues for some difficulty. So with the curse of the demon or the wise of the Nioh, it changes combat flow. So you are incentivized to go for burst counters, grapples, and final blows to even the scales a bit more so. And it does help regulate combat flow, and I think it did it quite well. Whereas if you don't deal with it, enemies are far more punishing. So I think that rewards a certain type of play, which is a good thing. And not to mention, enemy movesets are pretty diverse. Burst counter timing or burst attack timing has changed as well. So, for example, Magra Naotaka in, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I assume I'm not. But on Samurai and Strong difficulties, he has a burst attack in which he attacks he does a 7-hit Odachi Flurry. All right, that's a burst attack which you can shut down as soon as it comes out. And then in Demon and Beyond, it's just a normal attack. And I'm like, oh my God, they're crazy. It's just, they do make the game more difficult. And while I do think having certain enemy combinations would be more challenging, I think it would border on the point of unenjoyable. It seems like something very intentional. They want things to, from what I've gathered, it seems like they want things to be challenging, but in a fun way. And I think, for example, having certain combinations of enemies would be unfun. I mean, imagine a double Itsumare fight. Like, one's bad enough.
Yeah, that would
Have
be
two.
a bit.
I mean, let's go to the Abyss, all right? Abyss and Nioh 1. You eventually had double boss floors. But it just became a thing of, hey, let me kill this one target as quickly as I can so I don't deal with this bullshit until I can deal with the main guy. All right, that's all it became. And was it that fun for me personally? No. Like, I was like, okay, there may be countable combinations of bosses that actually were memorable. And I think of them were like, there were maybe 10 floors that I felt were actually meaningful out of the 1,000. And 2 of those were 100 Eyes and Kelly, which is floor 666, and then the final floor, which was Sanada Yukimura and Date Masamune. Like, that was it. But even the final floor was just like not that fun. Because it was cool to fight Sanada, but Date was just a nuisance because he just spams shit and he does things halfway across the map. And so it was just kind of a chore. And that's actually one of the reasons why I stopped doing a lot of challenge runs, because
Mm-hmm.
they just felt like a chore. And when I'm playing my game, I don't want it to be a chore. I want to have fun. Now, where I do think a lot of the interesting enemy encounters occur are actually in the scrolls. The scrolls have all sorts of different things that have made combat just replayability that much better.
Yeah,
So
I
that
agree with that.
they tell you that, but I think for missions, I think they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Missions, I think, are fine. But yeah, the scrolls are pretty challenging because it's like, all right, boss, now, hey, look, there's a dweller on the side that can mess you up if you don't deal with it. Or, oh, hey, Azai Nagamasa spawns with Oni bees, but they're a double-edged sword because if you kill, they're annoying to deal with. Skulls are always annoying to kill. But you kill them and then you get elemental boost, which you can use on the boss. So it's like, okay, this seems a bit more thought out and more planned, and it actually does work in terms of it being enjoyable. So
Mm-hmm.
I I I can see your perspective, but I do feel that the developers did really think it through. And I do feel that their decision, while maybe it's not the absolute most perfect thing, I certainly think it was probably one of the best ones they can come with.
Sure, that's a fair point. So pretty much, it has been an hour.
Yeah, time does go by pretty quickly. Are there
So,
any last questions perhaps you feel
uh,
that I need to answer? Because I can go for one more.
not really. I pretty much asked whatever all the thing I wanted to ask. I have one curiosity though. You mentioned you
Sure.
played Ninja Gaiden, but did you play Sigma or the Black and 2 version?
So I've played Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox, so this was before Black. I remember
Mm-hmm.
I stopped playing sometime around Hurricane Pack 2 or something like that. So this was, just when Lunar Staff was released. And then I never played Ninja Gaiden 2, but
Oh, you should.
when I played the series, I played Sigma, Sigma 2, and Razor's Edge.
Okay.
So that's going to be what's coming out on June 10th for the Master Collection, so it'll be
Yeah.
somewhat familiar territory for me. But yeah, the reason why I haven't touched Ninja Gaiden 2 or gone on my way to go with it is because in order for me to play it at 60 FPS, I would need to get like what is an Xbox One X or Super or whatever it is, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna buy a whole console just for one game. I already did that with
Yeah.
the PS3.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I did that for the PS3, but I got both Sigma and Sigma 2 off of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now that the collection's coming to basically every system, I'm just gonna play it on the PC, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually really excited for Razor's Edge because I never explored Cicada Surge at all.
Oh,
All right,
okay.
I kind of had the same issue that I did when it came to Nioh,
Mm-hmm.
in which I didn't retain an open mind. So I was so stuck with like how Ninja Gaiden 1 and Ninja Gaiden 2 felt. And so Razor's Edge all of a sudden like kind of changes quite a bit of that with steel on bone stuff, with the effectiveness of say like guillotine throw and whatnot. But I didn't even give Cicada Surge a chance. I deliberately avoided it because I'm like, oh no, I'd use it as my key and I need my key to refill health. Then you
Mm-hmm.
see players like Kagero Simaru and then CM Devils and then they use Cicada Surge and I'm like, God, I'm an idiot. I never tried this out because it's on-demand animation cancel with no recovery frames for the cost of key, which you get from doing things like Steel on Bone and just killing enemies. And I'm like, okay, I gotta try this now. And yeah, I know there's issues with Razor's Edge and whatever and whatnot, but I think in
No, it's a
general,
great game in general. Like it's the only one I actually never played of the Ninja Gaidens. I played pretty much all the others. But from what I saw, yeah, it's a great game. Like it's different. It's a lot different from the others. It's not really like Ninja Gaiden Black or Ninja Gaiden 2 or even the Sigma ones. But on its own, it's a great game.
right? And it's different, but it's a lot of fun. And I think that kind of harkens back to kind of my core message, which is just have fun with your games first and foremost. Like I
Mm-hmm.
understand all the criticisms people have versus say stuff like, here's the difference between this is why Sigma is better, this is why Black is better. I'm like, look, I don't care, man. I don't care anymore. I don't care about this discussion. You guys are splitting hairs over ultimately small things. Like, is the game core experience overall fun?
Mm-hmm.
If so, great. If not, then fine. But it's like people are getting obsessed, like, hey, you know what? Berserkers and Sigma, you can counter spam, but in Black you can't. And then I saw like the strategy to deal with the Berserkers. I'm like, okay, that's like hardly any different.
Yeah, no,
Like, all right, whatever. You guard
you need to keep
reset and you
them.
can still go kill
Yeah,
them
guard
versus like
reset,
counter.
forward Y with the double arrow, and
Exactly.
keep the others
That's
off screen so he doesn't attack.
Exactly. Versus like, all right, well, I support the guard reset and then doing forward Y, you know,
Mhm.
with a
And
Dabi,
this
you can
coming
just
and this
count.
coming from someone that loves black and actually prefers it to the Sigma versions.
Right. And that's what I mean. If you have a preference for it, that's great. But my problem has never been with people who have a preference. No, of course.
Mhm.
I'm gonna understand you're gonna like a version for others because it suits your preferences more. Great. My issue has always been with people who then develop a fucking ego about it and they're just like, you're trash because you like this version of the game and I'm gonna make you feel
Mhm.
bad. I'm like, why do you care
No,
that
that's
much,
just
man?
stupid. Like
Like,
criticize the game, don't criticize the people. That's pretty much it.
exactly. Like having it is completely fair to criticize a game, and you should just be reasonable about it and be constructive about it. That's it. Constructive criticism. Have your criticism lead to something meaningful. If you want an actual change, then make sure your criticism reflects that, not just you're bad and you're trash. Like that aside from being a dick move, it just doesn't really allow for any growth whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so that's really important to me, to make sure that players engage with their communities, engage with just their game in a healthy way, because these are just video games and we're here to just have fun. And that is all I'm trying to do. I want players to have fun with their games and to be able to get even more fun in what I think is an avenue they haven't explored, which for me, when it comes to Nioh 2, is simply style play. I think it's underrated, underappreciated, and just not well known. So if players can get exposed to that, then perhaps they can experience a side of the game
Mm-hmm.
that they never knew existed and experience the same sense of joy and the same exploration that I did when I first learned about it. And so that's all I'm trying to do. So hopefully my channel can help not only showcase that, but yeah, I guess just showcase it. That's all I'm trying to
Yeah,
do.
that's great. That's great. I think the only problem is that the community, the style community is so small that even with for someone that is interested in learning, it's really sometimes it's really hard to find the right people. Like
Right. And that's
if you search around YouTube for Nioh, you most likely find like 90% build stuff and never some more style play.
right. It is an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally see
Do
that.
you
It
think
is
there
an
is a
uphill
way
battle,
to,
bottom line.
outside of Discord, do you think there is a way to have a more centralized hub for people to?
I think, in all honesty, while the player base and the communities can only do so much, I
Mm-hmm.
think if the company, Team Ninja itself, had a more of, I guess, an arm in marketing their game, I think that would kind of solve the problem.
Okay.
But I think they're doing what they can with whatever resources they have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've mentioned that I've done a podcast with their community manager, and so I think he's been a big factor in actually introducing players to style play. So whether it be like, hey, he retweets one of my combo mats and then people watch it, or people just happening to discover my channel on Twitch and whatnot, like it's been quite a big jump. And now, and here's one thing. So I'm going to say this, and I'm pretty sure it's going to come across as self-promotion. And again, I apologize for that. That's not my intent. But
No, self promote all you want, man.
okay. But recently I hit Twitch Partner, and I hit Twitch Partner is hard to get enough into as it is. I know the requirements have become a lot more stringent more recently as opposed to how they were years back. But I got Twitch Partner from playing Nioh 2.
Mm-hmm.
Nioh 2 has pushed me to that point. All right. So I definitely think there is a community that is very interested in this. It's just hard to discover, and it's actually become easier for me to showcase that and to kind of do what my mission, so to speak. Ever since I hit partner, my viewership has just jumped a ton. Like I'm used to, you know, I told you I started with like 3-4 viewers, like
Mm-hmm.
2 of them being people I know, and playing Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge when I had a pretty janky setup. And now it's like, wow, I'm getting over 100 viewers. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Oh wow, someone dumped like $100 in subs. I'm like, are you out of your mind? You know, it's like, you know, I was just playing this because I enjoyed it. And, you know, I'll promote the game because I enjoy it, not because I'm getting like a cut or anything. But there is definitely a growing community for this type of stuff. And I think it's kind of one of those things, it's easier to get noticed once you already have the notice. It's kind of the
Yeah.
same experience with Twitch Partner. Like, as soon as I got the purple check mark, I was like, oh, I'm getting average viewers of like 100, 115, or my max is like 200, and I didn't get rated by anybody. I'm like, I didn't really do anything drastically different. So maybe it's just, I put in a lot of work beforehand, and I've just kind of been trying to, I guess maybe all the work I've done before has helped me get to this point. But I think there is a point, and the community and I have been trying to do this, where we've been really trying to hit critical mass. So the only way we can do that is by pumping out good content as well as we can. And so I try to use my platform now to promote other players, other streamers, as we've talked about. Another Twitch streamer, for example, is Zlod93, who's pretty much just like takes up the mornings for all things Nioh related. And he's actually the one who started the Discord, which I think we have close to like 1,000 members, and we have the community manager and team ninja there, so we report our bugs and whatnot. So I certainly think it's growing. I would say about a year ago, sure, we were pretty non-existent, even though we were still growing. But now it's like we're getting closer and closer to that point where we can really showcase Nioh as its own thing. Because like I've said, I find that Nioh 2 is just slipped under the radar, but I find that once players are able to sink their teeth into it, they're able to get a lot of fun out of it. And, I've already talked about the hurdles that kind of get in the way in that, but we're trying to push past that to show, hey, look at this fucking masterpiece of a game. You put your time into it, you're going to get so much out of it. It's going to be a blast, like regardless. So that's just something we're working on. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that point of critical mass. I don't know when exactly that's going to be, but can't get there without trying. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And I hope more people discover the mechanical side of thing of Nioh, because it's an amazing game. Like, I have my criticism, like I said, but like it's a great, amazing game. Like
Right. And just I guess just for you to know, and for anyone who's listening to know, I am making Combo MAD 13, and that's going to revolve. Yeah, so that I'm going to try to get out by next week. I don't know if that's possible, but some of the player creativity I've seen on that is just amazing, especially with some of the new gameplay additions like soul cores and new enemies. And I'm excited to debut it. I definitely want to do at least one more. Honestly, I'd prefer to keep the Combo MAD series going indefinitely, but it may not be realistic given how busy people are with their own lives and how things have changed in the last year or so. But it is always exciting to see stuff like that. And when I put stuff together, I like to put things that wow me or wow someone who doesn't know what to look for. So like I actually show the stuff to my wife. I'm like, hey hon, what do you think of this? Like, and she's completely uninitiated to Nioh. Actually, not quite. She knows how to do a feral, shiftling, grapple, reverse counter stuff.
Okay.
So she's not. She knows some stuff, but she basically doesn't know much when it comes to Nioh. So I show it to her, and then she'll tell me whether it looks cool and whatnot. And so her perspective is very handy. I usually show it to other people who know the technicalities behind it, and I've kind of been changing how I approach my combo mats so that it can appeal to as many different people as possible. So it doesn't. I want the entry to be able to enjoy the combo mats to be as low as possible, but those who are on, I guess, the more knowledgeable part of the spectrum are like, wow, I can really understand how crazy this was to pull off. But so it's kind of a tricky balance to do that. But I think I've kind of taken a lesson from how the developers themselves have done it, in which that basically with enough time, just about any player, and I mean this, any player can get into Nioh 2 and really enjoy the game, minus the whole new player experience. But like, you can play however you want and you can enjoy it. And so I'm kind of modeling my combo mats to be on that, so that they are easy to digest, even if you don't know too much about it. Kind of in the same way that on Twitter, maybe you've seen Sunhee Legend do some clips for Nioh 2, and they look really cinematic, and anyone who watched them were just like, dude, that looks so cool. Now, I know when playing them, I'm like, well, that's not too difficult to replicate. But
Yeah, it's
I'm trying to have that same effect where it's like, dude, that was so cool. I want to be able to do that. That's basically all I'm trying to have the combo mats be. And just a celebration for player creativity. So hopefully I do that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the new one, actually.
Yeah.
And to the weapon tutorials.
Yeah, that's going to take a while. Like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, dude, I gotta pace myself. This is gonna take a long time. So I'm just recharging my batteries, and hopefully things will get better.
Of course.
But yeah, I think that's all the time that I got.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me here. Hopefully you got whatever you were looking for.
Absolutely. You can pretty much spam yourself. Tell the people where you can. Tell the viewers where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me in my home, sitting on my couch. Nah, but I guess since you're allowing me to do that,
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
I stream on Twitch Thursdays through Sundays, 4 to 8 p.m. roughly on Central Standard Time. So, yeah, if you ever need like questions answered, I'll happily answer them for you. While I'm like right now doing 100% playthrough on every difficulty on the PC, and it's a lot of fun. But I'm kind of eager to get to Dream of the Demon now because things are a little too paper weak. But yeah, so I stream on Twitch, and then of course I do have a YouTube channel as well, so you can see all sorts of stuff on there. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I am one of the main moderators for the Nioh community Discord, so do join the Discord if you want something a little more live and available than my Twitch, because I'm on Twitch 4 days a week. YouTube is only so reliable for live help, but Discord is the best place to go. A lot of people there are super awesome. And we have most, if not all of the great players like Hagedasimaru, Last to Load, Zelot, so on and so forth. There's too many for me to name, so I'm just not gonna bother.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so definitely check out those.
Do send me. I am already in, but do send me the invite so I can add it to the description of the video so people can.
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, man. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
Hope you enjoyed it. Hope everyone enjoyed the episode. And see you again. See you later.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, guys.